All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to 96.5 WSLR LP Sarasota and WBPV 100.1 FM Bradenton. And I am so excited to be joined here by Synthwave icon, super influential artist to me. We have Nick, aka Betamaxx, on the show. Betamaxx, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Excited for a conversation, man.
So let's get into it. I know I've known your music for a long time. As I mentioned, you are one of the more iconic, legendary artists in the scene. Even if, even if you won't say it, it is true. But a
Thank
lot
you.
of our listeners, yeah, it's true, dude. Having you on here is just such a big moment for me. It means a lot, and I know a lot of our listeners probably don't know as much about you. So I do want to just get a little background before we dive into some of the deeper things. So I know, just to pinpoint you on a map here, I know you're in Pittsburgh. Is that where you're originally from?
Yeah. Born and raised here in Pittsburgh. I live right near the international airport. Just kind of, it's probably like half an hour outside of the city. And yeah, born and raised here. Yeah, for sure. Steel City for life, I guess. At this point, I'm 37, so I don't think I'm moving. Although I consider it all the time.
But that actually leads me to a side question I just want to ask you. I try to ask most artists about how where they grew up impacted, if they can think at all about how it maybe impacted their sound. And your sound's actually pretty upbeat for the most part, in consideration
Yeah.
of the cloudiness. So is there any part of that you can think of affected how your sound came out overall?
I don't know if it really has so much to do with growing up. I did, I was lucky enough to have a tangible childhood where, I rode around my, BMX bike. I built forts, we played video games and we did all that kind of fun stuff. And then we also, we had the internet that was just sort of like becoming a thing, and like MySpace became a thing. It was kind of an exciting time, and we all kind of know where that where that went as far as us being inundated with phones. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I would say that had maybe a little to do with my environment, and I don't know. My parents always would give me CDs and tapes and stuff growing up, and I think that played into it as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah, your influence from your parents. So, and that's actually a perfect segue into my next question because I want to talk about your environment a little bit. So, when you're not making some of these like iconic retro sounds that we all love, what's your environment like? What are you doing in your personal time, your professional time?
So I run my family's business. We run a business that repairs industrial equipment, specifically pumps for the oil and gas, steel, wastewater, power industries. And yeah, I just kind of do internal operations and stuff and management, and you know try to keep it going for my family. I've been doing it for over 10 years, and I've managed to squeeze in music somehow, working full time there for the better half of 10 years. But yeah, I've done some other jobs and stuff. But yeah, I just feel like I'm pretty much like any other small artist. We wish we could make a little bit more money from what we do. I do like that I work. It's a family run business, and I think there's something to be said for that as well. So
I know you had mentioned some video games. You also maybe had mentioned cars. What are you doing in your free time other than music?
so my leisure time, I actually spent the better part of, well, it's been over a year now doing. I'm renovating my house. I've take quite a lot of enjoyment to some DIY stuff.
Hmm.
And yeah, I do work in the garage. I have a couple of vintage cars that I like to, drive around, maintain, repair, stuff like that. And yeah, there's unfortunately not a whole lot to do where I live. I live in the burbs, and it's kind of like just far enough out of the city where I'm just like, it's kind of a drive. to get down there and fight the traffic and stuff. So yeah, I live a pretty quiet existence outside of music, believe it or not. And I'd actually I want to change that. I want to go I want to play some more shows. Not necessarily go on a full blown tour or anything, but definitely do some weekenders and do some more traveling. I haven't done that in a couple of years, and I think I'm about ready for it again. So
Hopefully, maybe we can get you to come down to Florida.
yeah, I just yeah, I was there last year, the retro feature fest. Or no, I'm sorry, Neon Retro Fest. Sorry.
Oh, you played in that? Okay. Wow, that's crazy. I just found out about it.
Mhm.
I didn't see you as one of the like artists on the thing. So, oh wow. How was that?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Grant and Amanda, they're the promoters, and they really bust their ass for these events. They're really cool. They did their first one in Rhode Island, I think in 19. That's like pre-pandemic. They were going to do the one the next year. You all know what happened, and then they eventually put another one together in Tampa. They moved down there, and it was at this like really nice hotel, and it was an
Oh,
all kind of inclusive. Like you didn't really need to leave the hotel. You have obviously your musical performances. They have a little mini arcade in there.
okay.
They have vendors. You have all your merch tables and stuff, and it was a really nice experience. I hope they do it again.
Me too. I thought the same thing. I was a bit bummed when I realized they didn't do it this year and thought, okay, maybe they're just not going to keep doing it. But how was the turnout, by the way? Did a lot of people show up?
Yeah, I'd say it was a great. I'd say it was a good turnout. It was a small hotel, so I mean, any more people would have almost kind of been crammed. You know,
Mhm.
their first one they did it at like almost like a convention hall sort of hotel. It was a really big complex up in Rhode Island. This one was like a more of an intimate venue, so it's probably half the size. So yeah, I would say it was a pretty good turnout. Maybe if they chose a little bit bigger hotel, cram some more people in there.
Yeah.
It's always fun. But yeah, like I said, I hope I know it's a lot of hard work to put something like that together and takes a lot of planning. So props
Yeah.
to them. I've did some shows in Orlando before. There's a little bit of a scene up there. And I'd assume there's probably one in Miami because
Oh,
if
yeah.
there wasn't, then I'd be really sad. I mean, it's Miami, like home of a lot of electronic music. But yeah, for sure. And book me in the winter so I can get away from this cold weather.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the best time to play here too, because it's nice. It's like in the 70s, right? I mean, it's just perfect weather in the wintertime here. I want to dive into some more of the gritty stuff here about the music. So going back a little further, Betamaxx reflects on his childhood experiences with 80s music and how it influenced his synthwave sounds.
I recall some early experiences of really kind of like getting into the music and like 80s music and 80s music with synthesizers specifically. Um, like since I was a very young age, my mom actually gave me Madonna Immaculate Collection cassette. And I always kind of I was really like that music, and it was kind of like different than what was on the radio at the time in the 90s. You're
Mhm.
still hearing a lot of synth and stuff in the 90s. But at that point, I heard a lot of like alternative rock and stuff, which was cool. But there was something special about that sound. And I had another interesting experience. I heard Billy Idol, Eyes Without a Face, in a TV show that I was watching when I was, I don't know, in probably my early 20s. And this was kind of before we had a whole lot of resources like Shazam, or like I can't like hold my phone to the TV and be like, oh, what's this song? I guess maybe go on a search engine and type it in. But I actually went to a local CD store. It was called Coconuts Music, and it was mainly just, yeah, physical media, CDs, movies, and stuff like that. And I asked the clerk, and I said, "Hey, do you happen to know this song? It's I think it's something about eyes without a face, and it's like an 80s song." He's like, "Oh yeah, it's Billy Idol." He's like, "Yeah, you'll know it by that rich synthesizer sound." And at that point, I was like, I don't think I'll ever forget that. I was because it has that like portamento string part at the beginning, that rise, and it's just like really really unique sound. And at that point, I was kind of like, yeah, I want to figure out how to make this music because I had already been, making music for quite some time. I've been in bands and I made like some trance style music and stuff like that. But I would say that was sort of a pivotal like, oh, that's what that is. It's a synthesizer. Okay.
Do you remember when you first kind of stumbled upon synthwave itself? Like, so, the kind of modern take on some of those old 80 retro sounds and synthesizers and whatnot?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I had a good friend named Vince. He was always into some interesting electronic music. He always like 70s and 80s funk, and he liked a lot of French house. We would go out and back in, my mid 20s, mid early to mid 20s, would go out and go out and drink and have a good time, go to 80s night and stuff. And there's like this little you know like night they had every Thursday at this bar we used to go to. And he had showed me a couple artists, specifically Miami Horror was one of them.
Oh yeah.
I believe Tesla Boy, Grum. So those are some early ones that they're still like really good. I still throw that stuff on from now and again, just to have a little throwback to that time. But these are like old, like 2010 era kind of synth revival music, I guess you would call it.
Mhm.
And then it actually turned me on to this little search thing, suggested FM Attack, which huge inspiration to me. Sean's actually a good friend of mine. Got
Oh,
to know each other pretty well over the years and worked together. He's a great dude. And there's also, Miami Nights '84,
oh yeah.
Lost Years, all the Rosa Corsa dudes, Laserhawk, Mitch Murder. And like we're talking like 2011. So this is like old. This is like before there was such a thing called synthwave. It was like new disco. It was kind of just didn't really have a coined terminology at that point. I don't think.
Yeah, that wave was building, right? It hadn't yet formed into a full wave yet, right?
Oh yeah, that was like I heard that music and I was like, all right, that's it. I'm figuring this out. I'm doing it. I'm doing it as soon as possible. And I began writing my first full-length album, Lost Formats, that year in 2012.
It sounds like come from a wide.
After discussing his beginnings in synthwave, I probe what it is about this scene that has inspired a decade plus of music production.
I feel it really encapsulates the 80s, I guess. I mean, that's the easiest way to put it. I've always really liked, John Hughes movies and John Carpenter movies and stuff, and I hear a lot of that sort of sound. And, once in a while you see like an indie film, that kind of is like inspired by that. And yeah, I mean, I like basically every asset of that era almost. It's not a lot that I you don't like about it. Aesthetics, the cars, the music. Yeah, I don't know. I really like the music. I really like synthesizers, man. I just think they're really cool.
Oh yeah, I mean that's So I kind of stumbled upon um, the music at the beginning, but at the same time, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, does music production, and he had bought like a Mini Moog and a DX7. He had a couple different like older synthesizers. I can't remember one of the other ones, but those synthesizers just blew my mind and just opened up that whole world for me. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like almost that nostalgia for a time we may have not even experienced personally, It's kind
Yeah,
of like what we make up, like the sort of fantasy about that time in our
it's
own
like an
mind.
expansion off of that. It's like we wrote a sequel for the 80s, right? We're living the sequel of the 80s in synthwave.
Right. It's like we didn't want that to stop. We like that. Let's keep that going.
Yeah, and synthwave is just ultimately, I mean, there's lots of
Scratching the surface of his production process, we discuss his loyalty to FL Studios as well as VST recommendations.
I use FL Studio. I just get I have 21 now. Free updates for life. That's the coolest thing about that
oh,
particular software. Um, it's workstations to me are just kind of like a means to an end. Everybody has their own sort of preference of. It's just like an easel, like an artist's easel, just kind of more or less, just a way to create. And I've used FL Studio since the early 2000s, believe it or not. It's been around for a very long time, and Really, it's one of those programs that just stayed the same in a lot of ways. They just sort of like kept the infrastructure and the look of the program and just like integrated features over the years, which is really nice. And then as far as a synth goes, hardware, hmm, well, I have to say my Prophet 6 because that's just something that I that's what I take with me when I do live shows. Well, I should say I did. I don't know if I'm going to take it moving forward just because it's really expensive and it likes to live in my studio. But as far as VST goes, Rolling Cloud all the way, they do a really good job with the emulation of their uh, like vintage classics, just like the Junos, the Jupiters.
Hmm.
That awesome. Like I can't say enough good stuff about that particular family of plugins. I always recommend it to people if they want to get quickly dial into a really sweet sound. Amazing presets. Brother Tiger does like presets for most of those synths, and they're always really cool. So I would recommend that to anyone really.
That's awesome to know. I mean, that was the other synthesizer couldn't think of when we were chatting, which is the Juno that my friend had. But I didn't know Roland made a VST. That is awesome to know. Very cool. But speaking of
I
hard, I want to ask you about your name, Betamaxx, right? I want to know how you picked that. I know it's a cassette recorder, right? So, why did you choose that as your moniker? And then, do you own one of those?
I don't own one, or no, I'm sorry, I do own one. I don't own a functioning one. I actually have a couple of them, but they're out of commission just because of the nature of the beast. They're a really complex playback machine with a lot of like spools and stuff. Like it's not VA. That's why VHS really, I think, ultimately won that war is because it's a simpler machine and it's cheaper to make it. They argued that Betamax was better, like hi-fi, better picture quality and stuff. I mean, to today's standards, it's a joke. I mean, like it's like, dude, it looks like a freaking, you know, grainy, lo-fi looking like picture. You can't really tell much of a difference, but that's why I actually own like a ton of VHS because that's just reliable. And then as far as that name goes, I actually really don't even remember, to be completely honest with you. I knew about the technology and I had done a little bit of research on it at the time, and I thought that they had really cool advertisements, some very like sci-fi looking ads for their players and all a bunch of like I love Sony advertisements from the 80s. They're really awesome.
This has brought up just a side question I want to ask you because you're talking about changing your name, and I know some artists, as an alternative to that, they just make a new moniker and they make something different, right? A lot of artists do that. Do you do that?
Well, I have a vaporwave project that I never released. I'd really like to release it at some point.
Dude,
It's called Dead Malls, and it's like basically, I don't know, music you would hear walking through a department store in, the early 90s.
like
And
glitch messed with.
it's kind of glitchy and dystopian and weird and like liminal, I guess, as the kids call it. But it's a lot of vaporwave is. It's just it ties into like I really like like doing urban exploring and going into like dead malls and abandoned malls and stuff. And I took a lot of pictures, so I was going to tie that into a vaporwave release. But other than that, I don't really have any other marquee names, so to speak.
Dude, well, okay. I gotta connect you with Noah, because he's all into that mall stuff. I bet you guys could chat about that. But man, you gotta give me one of those vaporwave tracks to release on the show or something, man. I gotta hear this. I
Oh
love it.
yeah.
That's
I,
awesome.
I have some of it on SoundCloud, but like I have a whole album that's like done. I want my one friend to be involved with it with the it's like the visual art of like the album cover and like I'm gonna do a cassette release and I want it to be like really special because I'm only doing one release and I'm not doing any other music with that project, so I want it to be like really good.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, good to know that it's gonna probably see the light of day at some point here. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's never been easier to create music, in my opinion. It's never been easier to, put a little studio together. It's, things that used to cost thousands upon thousands of dollars back in the day, you can just do in your living room if you want to, and make it sound great. Um, it's yeah, and I mean, there's just a lot of producers, man. There's a lot of people doing it, and it's tough to get noticed. But I noticed that it's kind of really flowing into the mainstream, like the newer artists that I see. There's still some OGs out there. I would still, say that my sound is more kind of an OG sound.
Mhm.
I haven't really adapted my sound, and I've just tried to refine it as I mature and get older, and try to, like, I don't know, polish it up a little bit, put some more thought into it, try new things, but at the same time, I still am anchored to my, I guess, uh, idea of what I want to make and what I believe in and what I like to hear. I don't really try to let the outside influence me too much with music.
I want to pivot for just a second before we kind of dive into like your inspiration for writing and stuff like that, and kind of what you have going on in the future. But I
Mhm.
want to know, I originally wrote five. I think I'm going to ask you, well, give me, I want to, you've been around for so long, and I just, hearing you talk, I know you're going to know of some of these artists that I had never heard of, you've met, or so who are,
Mhm.
give me like three of your top, hidden gem synthwave guys or gals even.
Hidden gem synthwave guys. I had, you know what? I actually had some good ones written down. I forgot to bring my notes with me. Um,
Writing them down as you say them, man. I want to know.
yeah. Well, yeah, like if I actually, I'll mention some of the old school cats, that I had mentioned earlier. Anything on like Mullet Records, which actually they did the original Tesla Boy EP,
Hmm.
which I think he may have won independent with for no, no, actually, I think they released some other stuff too of his, all the sweet 80s stuff. I mean, like it's very true. Actually, the label kind of ceased to exist in the early 2010s. So they turned the faucet off before it could really get flowing, I guess. But
Hmm.
Cassio's Social Club is one. The original Heartbeats album is just like I listened to it. I showed my friend Michael Weber this album. He's like, I never heard this album. And I was like, dude, are you serious, man? This is like the gateway drug here was this one. This was a big one here. It was Grum Heartbeats. Really awesome album. Who else? I think that's a few good ones there. Miami Horror was a really good one. Old, very very old school. I guess synthwave, new disco stuff. I always have this is like a really hard question for me because a lot of people ask me this, like, what are you listening to now, and or what are gems, or I'm just, I don't listen to a ton of music right now.
That's okay. That was awesome. And I had never, it's interesting. It speaks to some of the issue we had touched on with regards to like how much more resources and attention the house scene gets in like the electronic music landscape. And it's what
Right.
you said speaks to that, which is that I know who Grum is. I had no idea he made anything like synthwave. All I knew was his house stuff. So I will check out
Yeah.
Heart for sure.
Yeah, that was yeah. I mean, the 2010s was an interesting time, with the indie dance stuff too, like Cut Copy and stuff like that. Metric. I was just talking to a friend of mine about this particular little era of music, and it was a good one, definitely a good one.
So I want to ask you, this is everybody's different, and I'd love to hear people's approaches to this. So, what's your secret to like picking titles for songs? And then I mentioned in the questions there, I looked through a lot of your catalog, and it felt like the word lost came up quite a bit, at least more than some of the other words I had noticed. And I just want to know if you can speak to there's any reason for that.
Yeah. So I typically I look into a lot of old technological concepts pertaining to the Betamax player. Like I will just geek out and read articles um, from old, like even old magazines and stuff. Like old magazines are a great source of inspiration um, for any aspiring synthwave artists to get into like stuff from the 80s. There's just like I can't even tell you like I got gargantuan amount of like inspiration with like old magazines. Specifically, I have this collection I'm reading through now. It's called Omni Magazine. It's very cool. It's a sci-fi magazine, but like there's electronic and technological stuff in there from like as things advanced very quickly in the 80s. There's always something new, something like the tech war was like crazy, like a lot of stuff to dive into. But yeah, so that's one way I got inspired by like making song titles. Like you hear I use the word lost a lot. I think it really runs like kind of deep, because it's like we kind of lost our way with, in my opinion, with music in a lot of ways. And I just like don't really understand a lot of new music. And I'm not saying it's all bad. Um, just certainly not saying that, but it's like, yeah, we kind of like lost the art of making certain things, like how good 80s pop music was. Like why it's like, why did that go away? It's lost. We don't know why, it's kind of sort of that is like a meta idea behind that, I guess.
Sure.
After covering his influences and inspirations, Betamaxx goes on to explain why he considers himself a concept artist.
Yeah. I'm definitely more of a conceptual artist. I try to pick a main theme, I guess you would say, or a concept, and I write around that. And I try to adapt, my song titles around the main theme, try to tie them in that way. It's an easier, more, it just like works better in my brain. I've done a lot of singles lately, since my last release, but it's and actually it's hard. It's kind of hard for me to like like come up with a whole deal for a single, just because I'm like, I don't know. I like writing albums, and maybe it's futile anymore, because I feel like you don't get the hits, the plays and stuff that, like, if you just did a single, like you get so much more exposure, because that's just another shot out there to put into the distribution sphere. That's just one shot there, and it's like, dude, I just did a whole album, it's 10 tracks. That's one shot, but that's 10 tracks. You've spent a lot more time on it. So I try to look at it that way as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but I've always been super into concept artists, whatever kind of music it is. And so I think that's a good thing. And on some level, you're right. I mean, it is somewhat of a surprise that even like pop artists, although it's a lot of singles, they still write albums. They still release, even if they're shorter, right? So don't lose that edge. I still dig that. I think there's a lot to be said about the value in that.
Yeah, I mean, it's becoming fully immersed into a concept, and like, really,
Committing to it.
yeah, committing, and like writing something that's actual art. It's not, and like the sad thing is, it's people's attention span isn't very good anymore, for a number of different reasons. But like people don't really get into albums, it seems like, too much anymore. Like they want like the hit, couple of hit songs, and that's kind of it. They don't need it. It's like they almost like don't need a whole album. They don't want to sit and listen through a whole album, which I can understand, I guess. So it's like you're kind of just doing, it's like almost like a passion project. It's a labor of love in a way, to sit there and write a whole album. My friend George and I, he lives near me. He's a good friend of mine, and we've worked together on Lost in a Dream World. And we also did we scored a short film called The Remnant. Um,
Oh wow.
and it's like less than 20 minutes. These guys from Toronto put together, really, really cool. Like, I'm very, very awesome, like professional movie. And they commissioned me and my friend George to score it. Well, it was Betamaxx, but I wanted to get my friend involved, because he's good with like the really like nuanced kind of like effects and mixing and stuff. And yeah, you can check it out on YouTube. It's available. I'm trying to think of the channel. It's escaping me right now, but it's called The Remnant. I think it's 2019. Yeah, we did the scoring for it. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, it's not even a surprise at all that you would do some like, film scoring stuff. You'll have to send me that. I'll check it out for sure. I have a
Yeah, for sure.
on myself, so that's actually intriguing. But I just wanted to touch on your last, I believe your last full album release was Sarajevo. Is that right?
Sarajevo, yeah. That was during the dark days of the
One.
pandemic. And
Yeah.
yeah, I got really a deep dove on that one because it's definitely my most different album of any of my previous works. In my opinion, it's very conceptual.
Yeah, yeah, I loved it though, and so I wanted. That's why I dedicated a whole question to this album. I wanted to ask you, you're literally synthesizing the sounds and feelings of that '84 Olympics, right? So like, why?
Yeah, so I'll try to keep the story as short as possible. I wrote this during the dark days of the pandemic, so it was not in none of us really were in the greatest headspace, but I was on the internet and I always like looking for random abandoned buildings, like especially like malls, as I mentioned, and hotels. And I stumbled upon this hotel, and it's called Hotel Igman, and that is what's on the front of the Sarajevo album. And that album was illustrated by Trina Hines, my good friend. Shout out to Trina. She did a great job. But that's like an original one when the hotel was intact for the '84 Olympics. It was built for the '84 Olympics. And the picture that I seen was a bombed out shell of a building. And I was like, holy crap, this thing looks crazy. Like, where is this? And I was like, of course it's overseas, it's not going to be in the United States. Because it's very like Soviet Cold War, like geometrical brutalist like building.
Yeah,
And I was like,
man, color.
yeah, I like wanted to learn about this building, and that's where it kind of really started. And I learned that it was for the Olympics, and I was like, I'm a really big architecture fan. I live really close to like Falling Water. I don't know, from Frank Lloyd Wright. I don't know if you're familiar with that house. Like I live like an hour from it, so I'm really inspired by architecture and stuff. And I learned all about what kind of went on during that period and the good times and the bad times of Yugoslavia. And I kind of started watching. I did an extremely deep dive into the history of the Olympics and just the kind of the Serb the this Serbian war, the Bosnian Serbian war. And I like it. This is very like uncharacteristic of me because I'm really not into this sort of stuff, but I kind of like got intrigued by the story and I really wanted to encapsulate myself in this era. And it's just like, I don't know, it was like very happy for these people to Sarajevo to have like an event like the Olympics come to their area because it was like a one and done deal. And all the aesthetics and stuff were really cool. It's '84, the sacred year. Everybody loves '84. There's a good reason for it. That was like the lit year. It was a very good year. And so I got into some of the visuals.
Pulling ourselves back from the 1984 Olympics via Betamaxx's album Sarajevo, we return to the present and future Betamaxx releases.
So that's actually a perfect segue into what's now, right? That's 2021. That's in the past. You've had some singles you've been working on, but I know you've told me that you're working on a new album. So kind of if you've got just a synopsis of that, what territory is Betamaxx going to be covering in this new piece of work?
Yeah, so I'm working on a couple albums right now. Actually, well, right now I'm working on a couple remixes. Um, that are one's like basically done. That'll be out soon. I have another one that's in the works. It's gonna be done pretty soon as well. And then yeah, I don't know. I'm working on a couple different albums. The first one is very I would say classic synthwave very encapsulates just the old school sound that I mean I grew to love and grew with. A lot of Italo disco um sort of sound. I think it's going to be more of a high energy this first one for sure. It's a high energy album.
You need that
Uh,
after Sarajevo.
oh yeah. That one was that's definitely a chill album. I don't even really play anything live from that just because most of my stuff is really high energy and it doesn't really fit into it.
Yeah.
So this one's gonna be, yeah, it's gonna be on the more high energy side. Just think refined old school synth music. I'm trying to get some people. I have a couple collaborators. Think like, I don't know, my track Cosmic Voyage that I did with FM Attack, like that will be on the album. Kind of that high energy sort of energizing Italo music, I guess, for that one.
Mhm.
And I have this other one I'm working on, another chill, like more of a chill album as well. And I just sort of just sat down and started writing. Um, and I just like I had a lot of ideas come out of me like over a period of like a few weeks, and I'm like, oh well, this could be an album. It started one anyways, so it'll be yeah, another like 8 to 10 track album, more of a
We talking
chill
about
album.
talking like chill wave, chill synth, or like ambient?
I would say chill synth. Yeah, that'd be a good way to describe it. It's not like when I do make chill synth, it's not like the normal like kind of like home Odyssey sound. Like it's that which is I like that sound a lot. That's not really my target. Like, but I think a lot of people go for that sound, which is cool. I actually don't even know how to make that sound. I would be not a good candidate to make that, but my chill stuff is, I don't know. It's gonna be like obviously kind of boards of Kennedy-ish sounding and have like elements of like a synth wave sprinkled in there a little bit. But yeah, it's in the works. I'd say the high energy Italo one's gonna be sooner on the docket. I don't know, we'll see. It's a race. Depends on what I feel that day and what I feel like working on. So
That's kind of the beauty of it. I hope all of this stuff comes to see the light. And I only have one more question for you left, really, too. We've talked
yeah.
about so much, and I know we could go further, but for our listeners, where can they find more Betamaxx? Where can they get more of you in their life?
So yeah, I mean, I always encourage everyone, if they want to listen to go on Bandcamp, Betamaxx Music, 2X's, .bandcamp.com. I think that's the address. That's the best place to go for, anything up to date. I know a lot of people, if you're a normal listener, which most people are. I like Spotify, so like Betamax and Spotify and stuff. We still get a little bit of I still get a little bit of revenue from that kind of stuff. But if you want to contribute the most, definitely hit up the Bandcamp. There's merch on there. There's and my entire backlog, whatever's available. And if I ever do anything like we mentioned, like the little Halloween release or something, it'll be there, So.
Awesome, dude. Well, you heard it, everybody. That where to find him. That is Synthwave icon, Synthwave legend, Betamaxx. Um, s- Appreciate it so much you being here, man, and taking the time. I know we went over, but it just feel like you and I could have chatted for a lot longer. But do you have any parting words for our SynthWorld listeners before you go?
Yeah, thanks for if you gotten to this point, thank you for listening to the entire interview. Yeah, and I appreciate anybody that still is tuning in, continues to tune in. I will have more music coming soon, and yeah, hang in there. Just sometimes, I gotta spend a little time to make it a little bit better, and I can promise you it is coming. So I appreciate it.
Awesome, man. And we know though it's well worth the wait. Um, we're excited. It's been a few years since you've released your, another full album. So I'm excited. I certainly will keep our listeners in tune on that. And again, man, thanks for the time. Hopefully we'll get to catch up soon with you when the new stuff comes out. And then, until then, man, stay retro.
My pleasure, man. You do the same. Thank you.